All right, y'all. It is your boy Mixtape Moth, and we are at the halfway point of the year. Please smash that like button up. It's greatly appreciated. But it is time for a list of the best albums so far in 2024. Now, I would say that we had a decent first 6 months as far as releases are concerned. I'm not entirely as blown away as some people have stated about the year so far, but I think it was a solid first 6 months. That being said, we got to be real. A lot of projects were overshadowed by the Kendrick and Drake beef, which just seemed to take over months of the year. But the hope is that, the album releases will continue to get better because we are supposed to be getting some highly anticipated albums from legends like Nas and Primo, Common and Pete Rock, Snoop and Dre, as well as others. So if things go according to plan, the rest of 2024 looks even more promising. Fingers crossed. But these are 15 albums that I've been rocking with fairly heavy. They've had a decent amount of replay value for me, and they are in no particular order. So if I didn't include an album that you love, doesn't mean that I hated it. Perhaps it just didn't do quite as much for me as it did for you. The key thing for me when making this list is replay value. I had to want to play it in the car after I reviewed it. It could also mean that I just didn't hear the album, mean I can't get to everything. Starting off with number 15, I have 21 Savage's American Dream. So there have been some commercial, more mainstream releases that released this year that I liked more than in the past. And this would probably be my favorite one. I know hardcore hip hop fans don't kill me, but I kind of dug this project. I realize some traditionalists, may not get into 21 Savage, and that's perfectly okay, but I did find the production to be pretty hard hitting. There was a decent amount of soul sampling on this project, which is always a plus with 21 Savage. That being said, I can't say that I enjoyed every song, and some of the R&B joints I tended to skip over. At number 14, I would have Mach-Hommy-RichaXXHaitian. So this is a project that just might be an album of the year for some. And while I didn't necessarily share that same level of enthusiasm for this project, I still thought it was a good album so far. You had production from the likes of Sadu Gold, Conductor Williams, Quelly Chris, K Trinata, and Messiah Music. So I didn't love all the instrumentals equally, but I will say it was an eclectic batch. And lyrically, he did touch on a variety of topics, but as a whole, this might be his most accessible album as far as vibes, hooks, and production was concerned. Number 13, I would have Chief Keef's Almighty So 2. The thing that did stand out about this album was the fact that Chief Keef produced all of it, essentially, and his beat making skills are fairly unique. I gotta keep it a buck. I was not expecting some of the wild soul sampling that he stacked on this album, and there was the fair share of bangers that you would expect from Chief Keef, and there were also tiny bits of personal reflection as well. Obviously, you don't go into Chief Keef albums expecting quote-worthy bars, but this was a cool project that I think was well produced from front to back, and you can throw it on, when you're in that turn-up mood or when you're banging out some sets in the gym. At number 12, I would have The Game and Big Hit's Paisley Dreams, produced by Hippo. Now, this came out at the very beginning of 2024, and it's a short but sweet 9-track project that has both traditional and more modern West Coast production. We already know The Game was the MVP lyrically, but Big Hit did come through with that authentic rawness, and that has a little appeal. Now, I do suppose I could have substituted this with the Big Hit project that was produced by The Alchemist and Hit Boy, but as good as that project was, I did find it to be a tad bit sleepy after multiple listens, so I would put Paisley Dreams ahead of that. Number 11 is Benny the Butcher's Everybody Can't Go. So this was the major label Def Jam release that wasn't all that well received. I remember at the time I did the review, there was quite a bit of criticism for this project, and looking back on it, I can admit that it wasn't flawless. Still, there were high highs that I've played a lot this year. My only real complaint was that it was a bit of a scant album, and several of the songs fans had already heard a lot prior to the project. But even though Griselda fans may have wanted more from this release, It's still a solid one that I return to, but yeah, as far as the expectations going into it, I can see why it was underwhelming. Number 10, I have Your Old Droog-Movie. This was probably Droog's longest and most commercially ambitious release to date. Now, that's not to say it had a commercial feel, because it was still rooted in, contemporary underground production flavors. But there were some larger producer names this time around, like Just Blaze and Harry Fraud. Altogether, I did enjoy his storytelling and deep personal reflection, mixed in with his wit and impressive wordplay. All of those elements really made for a balanced project. It was on the somber side, but I think it's probably Droog's best release yet, or at least his most complete sounding. Number 9, I have Lupe Fiasco-Samurai. This was Lupe's first project in, 2 years and one, where he was reaccompanied by a soundtrack. The end result was a lyrically impressive jazz rap album. Yeah, the concept for this I still found to be a bit wacky, about Amy Winehouse as the battle rapper, but this does have some fantastic writing, and I really dug the jazz rap instrumental. Number 8, I have Boldy James' Across the Tracks, produced entirely by Conductor Williams. So after multiple listens, I did have some difficulty determining which release from Boldy I liked better. Was it Penalty of Leadership or Across the Tracks? It seemed as though a lot of folks in my comment section for the Across the Tracks review favored a Penalty of Leadership, but I slightly gravitated towards Across the Tracks just a bit more. But both are really strong projects for 2024. For number 7, I have Roc Marciano's Mariology, his first project since the standout 2022 release, The Elephant Man's Bones. And while I'm not as blown away by Mariology as I was that project, I still found this to be an enjoyable album. You had production from The Alchemist as well as Animos, although Roc did the bulk of it. There were some really out there idiosyncratic instrumentals, like on the opener and the outro, beats that were quirky as ever, but still sonically pleasing in a weird way. I dug the posse cuts on this, and even though the drums were very minimal at times, there was still enough low end to make things interesting. Number 6, I have the Dogg Pound's We All We Got, released on Death Row. So this had production from legends like Rick Rock, Jelly Roll, DJ Battle Cat, Superfly, and DJ Premier. And he also had the contemporary sounds of Mike and Keys. Now this project was not perfect, but it had enough nostalgia. And it was solid enough all the way through to win over old school heads, myself included. There are quite a few G-Funk tracks that will immediately take you back to the mid-90s, but there was still a modern enough twist on things sonically. Mike and Keys did their thing, but I am going to keep it all the way real. I do wish there would have been some production from Daz, a little bit more production from Battle Cat, as well as Superfly. Number 5, I have the collab project GUTTR, produced entirely by the iconic Havoc of Mobb Deep, and it features Rass, Kass, and RJ Payne. You had Havoc on the boards, of course, and RJ Payne and Rass, Kass doing their thing, but I will say RJ Payne was the MVP on this project. Now, this is no shade to Rass, Kass. Obviously, he's a West Coast lyricist legend. But RJ Payne was really spazzing on each and every track, demonstrating why he is such a formidable new school MC who makes traditional hip hop. Number 4, I have Conway the Machine's Slant Face Killah. Conway's first drop of the year, and a project that you could tell he spent a little more time in crafting. You had quite a bit of variety instrumentally. Of course, there were bangers, some soulful cuts, those head nod and boom bap records, as well as some wavy trap. I have to point out that some Griselda fans have been a bit displeased with the direction that Benny, Conway, and Gunn have taken within the past year or so sonically. But as someone who does also like trap in addition to boom bap, I don't mind it. That being said, I'm also aware that Conway could probably be doing a little more as an artist than he is currently. Things do seem to be so natural for him. As a result, he might be on cruise control for some of these projects, but still, I thought this was a fun listen. Number 3, I have Ransom-Lavish Misery, produced by Harry Fraud. Now, this is the first drop of 2024 for the ever consistent duffel bag Ran, and lyrically one of the strongest projects thus far. Fraud did provide Ran with a moody batch of instrumentals. Now, some were glorious and more beautiful, but there was that desolate and dreary quality to a lot of them that did match Ransom's stoic, bleak lyricism. It's only 8 songs, so there is somewhat of an EP feel to it, but there are no misses here, and it's something smooth that you could throw on and contemplate over. And I believe Ransom is going to probably drop a project before the year's out. For number 2, I have Masta Ace and Marco Polo's Richmond Hill. Now, we know that Masta Ace is one of the most consistent and well-respected MCs from the 80s, who never seems to miss when it comes to crafting these conceptual albums. This Richmond Hill album finds Ace reunited with Marco Polo. They last connected for A Brooklyn Story during the 2010s, and while I found that to be a strong release the year it dropped, I did enjoy Richmond Hill a bit more. Yeah, for some reason, I just found Richmond Hill to be one of the best releases so far this year when we were talking about traditional 90s styled hip hop for this new era. And for number 1, I have Husk Kingpin and Ninth Wonder's The Supergoat. Husk Kingpin is, of course, one of the most prolific and unique voices in underground hip hop, and he may have given us his most complete project with The Supergoat. As far as the instrumentals were concerned, Ninth Wonder was in his bag. You had a collection of funky and soothing soul samples on deck, and Husk Kingpin, he came through with his poetic imagery as usual. Yeah, there was just something about this project that felt a little more ambitious for Husk Kingpin. Perhaps it was the contributions from a legend like Ninth Wonder, but the vocals, everything just seemed more clear and crisp on this project. Okay, I lied. I guess I had 16 albums listed. I didn't want to talk about J. Cole's. I might delete later. Now, this was one of the best projects of 2024 so far, but it did take a hit for many folks because of the way J. Cole bowed out of the Drake and Kendrick beef. Now, looking back, he probably made the right choice, but at the time, this album was probably overshadowed by his actions, right or wrong. But if you can separate yourself from the incident and separate J. Cole from that particular incident, you will find that this particular project from Cole was on the level of albums like The Off Season and maybe some of his earlier mixtapes. The one thing which may have been seen as a contradiction now is the level of hunger and confidence that Cole displayed on this project. I mean, he was coming at the necks of all the competition, really wanting to smoke with everyone. And it made for some great verses and strong songs that just get you hype. And I gotta admit, it does have me looking forward to the fall off. Thankfully, you know, when the dust settles, time can be kind for rappers. Okay, so those were my most listened to projects so far in 2024. Now, I do want to hit y'all with some honorable mentions real quick. A strong case could be made for these. I did listen to the Mooch and DJ Muggs Rockstar quite a bit, as well as the El Camino and Real Bad Man project. Could also throw in Dave East's Apartment 6E, the Crime Apple and Big Ghost project, Bazooka, as well as Mickey Diamond's Super Shredder, Kenny Money's Blue Money, that's one of Young Dolph's artists, and Vince Staples' Dark Times. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section, what your top album so far would be. It's your boy Mixtape Moth. I'm signing out, but as always, it's peace and blessings.